Welcome to Latitude 40, brought to you by the Furno Collective. This podcast celebrates the heart, soul and history of the Furno Group, told by the people who call these islands home. Here we share stories of island life, of resilience and connection, of land and sea, of old ways and new beginnings, from the windswept shores to the heart of our communities. Each episode captures a piece of what makes this island life so unique. So islanders and visitors alike, settle in and join us as we explore the stories that shape the spirit of the Furno Islands, one voice at a time. Hello and welcome to Latitude 40. I'm your host, Jacqui Cooper. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, I'm speaking with a woman whose island journey began in 1987 after spotting an advertisement in a suburban newspaper. On a leap of faith, she rang the shipping agent of the time, Jeff Walker, and sailed from Welshpool to Flinders Island on the Lady Gillian. An accomplished artist, solo adventurer, teacher, cook and storyteller, she fell in love with this place and made it home. Her gallery in Whitemark showcases works that capture the beauty, light and ever-changing moods of the Furno Islands. But her story is far more than brushstrokes and canvas. She taught art at the school in the mornings, filleted fish at the factory in Lady Barron in the afternoons, and worked behind the bar at the sports club. She bought a shed at Lackrana, washing clothes on a tank stand, watching snakes slithering up the fly screens, and enduring nights when locals fired shots to intimidate the single woman artist. Resilient, creative and deeply passionate about island life, her experience of Flinders Island is both confronting and inspiring. Dawn Zelman, thank you for joining me to share your island story today.
Thank you, Jacqui, and thank you so much for your very generous offer to this story. Hope I can do it justice.
I'm sure you will. So, Dawn, you arrived on Flinders Island in 1987 aboard the Lady Gillian. Can you take us back to that very first trip?
First of all, we had to camp at Port Westport to wait for the boat, and because due to the bad weather. On board, it was the smell of the cattle dung, I guess, and the diesel fumes that were pretty overpowering and very, very rough sea crossing.
Oh, dear.
And I was with another lady who was an artist, and we had to share what later became my little tiny cabin.
Oh, is that right?
Someone threw in a bucket for us, just in case of any mishaps, sickness. Yeah.
So, Dawn, what was meant to be just a visit to the island later that year became your home. What shifted in you during that time and prompted the decision to stay?
Well, I needed to find somewhere to live and also to start a gallery, and I didn't want to encroach on anyone else's area in towns that already had a gallery. And also the island had the combination of mountains and sea. So I'd been in northeast Victoria before going to Melbourne, and where there were mountains, but it was about 200 or 300 kilometres to the sea. And as well as that, land was available and very, very affordable.
So did you decide to buy here on the island?
Yes.
So you bought land and a shed at Lackrana with a bungalow, water tanks and a dam?
Yep. Yes, I did.
And what did you see in that place? What possibilities were you imagining?
Well, initially just a place to live. It was a very, very simple life too, which I really enjoyed, not having to do lots of housework. In the early days, I had some local visitors, and the husband of the wife said, "Dawn, what do you do for your ironing?" And I said, "Oh, just put that in the line. Don't need to do ironing here. The wind will do that for you."
That's so true too. And what was it like living in the shed?
Well, it was small. Probably should go back to when I first arrived. The very first thing I saw, I was taken out by locals, and there was a snake sitting in, because most of the shed was really large, but it was mainly workshop, and there was a little room that contained that I could put a bed in. It already had a fridge, a gas fridge and a gas stove, and it had a sink, but the water wasn't connected, and there was an 800-gallon tank outside. So the local got the shotgun and shot a hole in the wall. So that was the beginning of
And was that
putting the pipe.
What was that hole for? Or what did he shoot that?
Oh, so he could then cut a hole to put the pipe through.
Oh, to give you water inside.
Connect the water.
Wow.
Yeah.
Luxurious.
So they were first memories. Also, the toilet was right up, well, quite away from the little shed, and it was very snaky country as well. So they dug a great big hole instead.
No plumbing permit back then.
No. So it was very, very basic living. It took a long, long time before I bought over a little potbelly stove for heating and hopefully to have hot water. But unfortunately, I had to wait a long, long time for the plumber to come and connect it because he thought I would leave very quickly, that I wouldn't last.
Yeah, because you were a single lady, an artist, living on your own, out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. Well, you proved them wrong.
Well, I stayed and I'm still here 39 years later. Yeah.
So you arrived in November of that same year on the Lady Gillian with a trailer load of furniture and your Subaru four-wheel drive.
Yep.
So can you paint us a picture of that arrival?
Gosh, it's a long time ago. So it's, it is quite hard. But I think the general idea was that, and I'd already bought the land out at Lackrana and the shed, so I was set up for that. But Flinders Island, even that first trip, wasn't like anywhere that I could compare it to in Australia. In fact, out on the east side, the Darling Range reminded me of more of Scotland.
Right.
The mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just seemed to be totally different to anywhere else.
And was that the attraction or part of the attraction?
Oh, that and the fact that it had the mountains and the sea for painting. And I wanted to set up a gallery, not so much for my own work, because I only ever had 2 exhibitions there, was for other people to run it as a gallery.
Right.
And I sought out all the locals at that time who did anything in the art area.
And was it on that trip that you enjoyed a nice meal on the Lady Gillian and then asked the captain if you could work as a relief cook when the permanent cook went on leave? Was that the trip?
No, I'd probably been there a little while when I started to look for work and thinking, what can I do? And I was told Dawn Zelman should get a proper job and work in the shearing sheds. And I thought, well, I can cook, so probably it would be a better option to work at sea and have that, because I've always had a sense of adventure at any rate. So, yes.
What did the captain say when you asked him if you could be a relief cook on the ship?
At the time, it wasn't available, but that he would remember that and if the time came, yes. Because I was a bit shocked that there was no fresh green food. Yeah, they seem to eat a lot of fast food and very basic food.
Can you tell us about your first trip on the Lady Gillian as the cook? Like, when did the message arrive?
Yes, the message was sent out to Lackrana and asking me if I'd be able to report the next day because they needed a cook and they were going to Hogan Island to take cattle off. Brian Stackhouse had the lease on Hogan Island and they were going to take the cattle off and ship them to Port Welshpool. And the current cook was more valuable in the stock area.
For that particular trip. So then you moved in. And so that was your first experience?
Yes. It had a slow combustion stove and a little gas stove, but I was used to a slow combustion stove, so that wasn't a problem. And I just cooked like I would cook for my family, basically. Yeah.
And how many did you have to cook for on that trip?
13. Yeah, total of 13. Because there were 6 islanders who all helped and were very, very experienced. Your father was one.
Right.
Yeah.
The stockman. Yeah. Did they have a table big enough?
No, it only seated 6. So there were 2 settings and I had to wash everything in between and yes. But when I finished, Captain Garth Simmons said that I could go aboard because I had a camera.
Yes.
And a good camera at that stage. And he said that I could go on shore and take photos there where they were lassoing the cattle and swimming them out to the Lady Gillian, which is a very, very unique operation and very, very dangerous for the men as well.
I imagine so.
What I did was I had to jump from the side of the ship into the rubber dinghy, which was manned by Reg Pickett and Neil Pickett and Brian. And all I could see, I think I closed my eyes, all I could see when I jumped was these great big arms, which caught me very ably.
Oh, wow. Isn't that amazing? Jumping into the arms of Reg and Neil.
Much to the amusement of the crew at the time for a very short while.
And so what do you remember most vividly about watching the cattle being swum out?
It was incredible exercise, expertly done. It was very dangerous, especially when they were lassoing them. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but they put ropes on their heads. Then they managed to swim them out on each side of the rubber ducky. And sometimes for the smaller cattle, they would fit 3 in a cage.
Right. And how would they get the cage out?
They put a harness. That was the winch.
Right.
They winched that up. And for the cattle that were swimming on the side of the rubber ducky, they put a harness underneath the bellies and winched them up.
And these are wild cattle, aren't they? They don't really see people on a regular basis. So the Lady Gillian seemed to have some unforgettable personalities. Can you tell us about working with Captain Sims and what kind of skipper he was?
Captain Sims was a really, really good skipper who disciplined his men. So, I felt very comfortable with that. He also allowed me to use his shower and toilet facilities, which was really close to the galley. And that was a real privilege because it meant I didn't have to walk the whole length of the deck to go down to the men's shower. He also allowed me to walk around barefoot because I was known to walk barefoot because I've always felt much more stable anywhere in barefoot. So yes, it was never ever did I ever feel unsafe on the Lady Gillian, but certainly under Captain Sims when he was the skipper. And he didn't suffer fools. He liked people to use their intelligence with the stock. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you became friends with a crew member nicknamed Sprocket.
Yeah.
What are some of the cheeky or memorable things that he got up to?
Well, on that trip to Hogan Island, unfortunately, there was a loss of a very valuable bull, and Brian decided to slaughter it so that he wouldn't lose the meat, and it was hanging up on the winch, I think. Tony came in before lunch and he said, "I've got something I'd like to cook for you." And in his hand he had this furry thing, and I'll leave that to your imaginations to work out exactly what that was. And then he said, no, I'm going to make a purse out of it. So I don't know whether that ever happened. So yeah, Sprocket was always entertaining. At one stage he had all his hair cut off and he was so proud of that, so I took some photos and I painted a great big larger than life-size portrait of him on the inside of Lady Gillian. But by that stage, Captain Sims had retired and the skipper at the time made the men paint it out, which was, it was quite a harmless thing. Another time, we were sitting offshore at White Mark for 6 hours, I think it was going to be, and I'd given the men their lunch and left something for their afternoon tea, and I saw a tinny sitting on the deck. So I said to Tony, "If you can get me ashore, I will buy you," it was Sunday afternoon, "I'll buy you a slab of beer." Well, by the time I was ready to go over the side to get into the tinny, Tony was sitting in there and there were no oars. So he got the shovel that they clean the sheep dirt up with in the hole, and he rowed very frantically ashore. With a shovel. And usually Sunday afternoon there'd be different people around the town, especially if the boat was due to come in, just cruising around town, seeing if there was anything going on.
Yes.
And not one person was around to see it, which was, a bit disappointing. So I ran up to the hotel, got him his slab of beer, and as quick as a flash he was off. And of course that evening I cooked dinner for them because by that time they were in. Yeah. Another time, which stands out in my mind, was once again we're offshore at White Mark and all the men were getting ready so that they could have their time off that evening and having their showers. And Tony had his shower and he came out and it was sunny day and it was afternoon smoker time. So all the men were standing around the galley area and Tony came out with his towel wrapped around him and all of a sudden he drops the towel with this great big smile on his face. Another thing he used to do, as far as I knew, I always thought under Captain Sims' time as skipper that it was a dry boat, so there was no alcohol. But because Tony was such an amazing worker, and I don't know, but occasionally you'd find a couple of empty long necks in your gumboots.
In your gumboots?
Yeah.
He'd hide his empty long necks in your gumboots.
I mean, it might have been done at the weekend, who knows.
Oh, he does sound like a character. Yeah, it certainly makes it.
Well, certainly our entertainment. He was a little boy who never really grew up.
Yeah.
And of course, Neil was his son.
Oh, yes. And Reg?
Yeah. And Neil ended up being the youngest skipper on the Lady Gillian. Yeah.
Oh, so Neil got to skipper the Lady Gillian.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that
That's
fantastic?
at the time I left, I think, just when the boat finished. Yeah.
So, Dawn, in 1988, you purchased the old RSL building, which had previously been the council chambers, and you transformed it into an art gallery with 2 rooms as gallery space and the rest as your home. What inspired that leap?
Well, initially, that was my intention because there was no gallery on the island, and to have it mainly for other people's exhibitions, which I did. Well, I had the very first exhibition. I think it was the first one because I flew out with Leadham to Preservation Island and I painted there for a week, did a whole series of paintings, and that was my first exhibition. From thereafter, I just sought out everyone that I could find that did any art-related work. People like John Parrish.
That you enjoyed that?
Yeah, I love doing the exhibitions.
Yes.
And I had different one every 6 weeks, right through till Easter, because after Easter, really not many people visit the island.
During
way
peak
back then.
season.
Yeah, during peak season.
And you've still got that art gallery today?
Yes, but unfortunately for me, the council set up a gallery for the community and that took all my local business, and I've never had a local exhibition since. No one would put work in my place because it's undercut by my fees, which were very low anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I had to fill it up with my work.
And you've got an exhibition on at the moment, haven't you?
Yes, at that gallery, yep.
So hopefully get lots of people calling in and admiring your work and potentially purchasing some of your lovely art to take home with them.
Mainly to get rid of it these days because after 55 years of, almost 40 painting here, there's a lot of work.
Yes, I imagine there is. So you mentioned earlier that after you got the gallery, you realised that you'd need a winter job to make things work financially. What job did you find?
Oh, well, it was working on the Lady Gillian.
Right.
Because after that Hogan trip, the trip out to Hogan Island, when the permanent cook went on holidays for 6 weeks, I would fill in for him. And I'm not exactly sure of the dates, but I think it was about 92, 93 and 94 I did it full time.
And the Lady Gillian didn't just do the general cargo from Welshpool and Launceston. What else did she do?
Oh, I did the occasional trip to Cape Breton Island.
Yes.
One time we did 3 islands in the day.
3? Wow.
Waterhouse was one. Cape Breton Island was the other, where we unloaded a lot of cargo. Waterhouse, we unloaded sheep. And Lady Baron was the last. And that was during Captain Sims' time.
So, Dawn, did you ever have any visiting artists that you did exhibitions for in your gallery?
Yes, I did. I had Elspeth Vaughan many times, actually. She'd been coming to the island for 17 years over a period of 30 years. She'd sold her work far and wide on the island. She was, widely supported. And she'd bring a group of friends, Max Angus, who was a musician, world-renowned, and he would hold up the paintings. Dr. Ramsey, who was an ear, eye and throat specialist and also a very good artist. So she'd usually have, 2 or 3 other painters with her and they'd go out and paint every day. So she came several times, and I'd have seatings in the first gallery. Up to about 60 people would come sometimes, and I'd have wine and cheese. And Elspeth would do very well financially, and Greg also, which was really good for both of them and for me.
And for the island.
And for the island. And I had Max Angus and a group of people on another occasion. A couple of artists who didn't come to their exhibitions, but one from the mainland and another one from Tasmania.
But they sent their art,
Yeah, they sent their art. Unfortunate because people didn't know them and they didn't come because most of the work was sold, especially by local people, when people knew the person who'd produced the work. Well, it sold.
Makes it a bit more personal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, Dawn, looking back now, living in a shed at Lackrana one day, cooking for the Lady Gillian crew, creating your own gallery soon after, how do you see that time of your life?
It was challenging, but it was adventurous and it was difficult. Basically, that sums it up.
Yeah, fair enough too. So did you have any sense at that time that you were stepping into something quite historic and unique?
Well, I knew that there was a huge amount of history as far as the Aboriginal community was concerned in all sorts of areas. Soldier settlers settling here and other areas too.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of history here, isn't there?
And Preservation Island, of course, but that came later. But I certainly never even considered that the shipping company would come to an end that was owned by the local people, owned and run by local people. And the island is certainly unique.
Yes.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
There were certain words that I didn't know what they meant, that I had to find out what they meant. But things like, that old girl could have been 20 to 80. Or scruff this or I scruff that. Go figure.
Yeah, that's right. A whole new lingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dawn, after 39 years of living here and experiencing island life in so many different ways, how have you seen life on Flinders Island change?
Firstly, there's a huge number of absentee landowners here, which you don't get to meet, and they're visitors. Yeah, that's a huge change. A lot of businesses have come and gone. The only businesses that have stayed have been the main ones: Walker's, Bowman's, Post Office, Hotel, Max's Store and Fear. And the biggest change was the Aboriginal community is thriving with land returned, acquiring businesses, jobs and acceptance after Steve Thomas's film made during the early 90s, Black Man's Houses, which gave the Aboriginals an opportunity to have a voice for change.
And you were involved in that?
Yes, with Steve's film, yes.
So what is it on the island that you hope always stays the same then?
Well, I think the most stable thing on the island and those businesses, all those businesses I mentioned, because they're the social hub of the island, where people you mightn't have seen for 2 years, 10 years. If you go into the supermarket or you go into one of the other businesses, you will connect with them again.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important factor.
I agree.
That they stay, yeah.
No, I love that. So from arriving with a trailer of furniture and a Subaru to living in a shed at Lackrana, from transforming an old RSL building into an art gallery and a home, to cooking for the crew of the Lady Gillian, Dawn, your story is one of courage, creativity and quiet determination. It's a story of saying yes to opportunity, yes to hard work, yes to community and yes to island life in all its unpredictability. And perhaps what makes stories like yours so important, they remind us that islands are shaped not only by the wind and sea, but by the people who choose to stay. Thank you, Dawn. Your story is such a remarkable part of this island story.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Jacqui, for this opportunity and your very, very generous words. But it's a bit overwhelming and a bit stunned, actually.
It's
to see yourself portrayed like that, because you never really know how people see you.
Well, that's true. No, we don't. Sometimes it takes someone from the outside looking in.
Because, we're not going to live forever.
No, that's a certainty. Thanks, Dawn.
Thanks, Jacqui.
We acknowledge the ancient history of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the first people of Lutruwita, Tasmania. This episode is recorded on the lands and waters of the Furno Islands. We recognise the continuing spiritual and ancestral connections of Tasmanian Aboriginal people to these islands, and we honour the strength, resilience and living culture of Aboriginal people today.